rugby players. If you could bring rugby.
Welcome back.
Brilliant.
Coach's Corner.
And
next question. What is joined by?
Was sort of the goal was
off coaching would be just
Canterbury Rugby. Oh, I get it now. Prior to his role,
my one was
around the world. He's gone.
You jump in with that. That's okay.
Side
getting into coaching and getting on this.
See you, brother. Thank you so much for your time.
Which he's managed to hone through as being a primary school teacher, principal. So it kind of really emphasises the fact of how important laughter and being a character is in that age group. And then our other guest today is Nathan Brown. Nathan's the RDO for Ellesmere. He's a product of the UC sports coaching degree. He's done a heap of amazing work in the junior and teenage grades, obviously with Canterbury Rugby as a resource coach, but also in the club capacity as well. So he's doing heaps of cool stuff now out in Ellesmere. So welcome, gentlemen. How are we?
Oh, good, Rick. Very nice. Nice to be actually seeing the sunshine for first time for a while. Been good.
How you doing, Nate?
Yeah, can't complain too much. Just sort of chilling out. A little bit of isolation at the moment, but that's the power of the world of teams and stuff like that. We can do the sort of fun stuff while we're off work or sitting at home. So filling my day.
Yeah. Oh, how good. Hey, it's cool to have you guys on. A lot of the guests that we've got on and about to have on, they've got really strong stakes planted in the community game. You two men definitely got the strongest stakes of them all, trying to manage the community game and getting out and about. So, Budgie, why don't you kick us off and tell us a little bit about your community, about North Canterbury, and maybe in particular why rugby is so important in it.
North Canterbury has a massive tradition of with rugby in general. Over the past, if you talked about North Canterbury rugby, you go straight to the Glenmark club. I mean, Glenmark and North Canterbury go hand in hand, and of course, it's not. We've got 10 clubs out our way, 10 senior clubs. Actually, if I correct myself, 11 now, because Kaiapoi High School have just launched a club this year, which I'll talk about a bit later on. No, it's very strong. Our tradition of kids speaking at after-match functions and food on, and it pulls the community together. I suppose even with today's driving backwards and forwards in transport, we still have quite a tribalistic sort of feeling around our clubs. Dad played for Ashley, so I'm going to play for Ashley, and my kids are going to play for Ashley, and so on and so on. It's very, very strong, and absolutely love it. And the link to the community is just huge.
Yeah, that's cool. We're talking to Dunners about, like you just mentioned just then, around I play for Ashley, or my dad played for Ashley, so I'm going to go play for Ashley. And you kind of do that full life cycle of club footy, and that's probably no better place to kind of highlight the importance of that circle of life of club rugby than what, like you said, that tribalism that comes out of it. So
yeah. I've been in the teaching game. I was in the teaching game for quite a long time, and the kids that I taught in my first years out in the North Canterbury area are now dads. And their kids are playing rugby at the clubs that they played for. And I watched them as juniors play. The traditions just go on. And I think that's what a marvellous thing about country rugby is. You stick with a club and you're at that club forever. And if people do, and Nate will know this too, if people do move from club to club, it's not looked upon all that favourably. And they're not normally from the area if they do, or decide to do that. So, you have guys who are in the club and play for a very, very long time.
Yeah. No, that's real cool. And Nath, what about you? What about out in the Ellesmere?
Budgie just summed it up pretty well there. So we're sort of similar mold there, where it's a real community atmosphere. The club rugby is still very much a big part of the communities around here. So as we talk about the aftermatch and the getting behind the games, like there's a 100th game at Waihora, and I imagine the sidelines will be absolutely packed just because it's the guys' 100th game going from there as well. We're also the same thing, we also produce. Obviously, we wanted to mention Dan Carter coming out of Southbridge, so we're good at the community thing and getting people going. So yeah, it's all good out here. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's probably a. I know that many other people, like, there's been articles written about it. Like, that's a pretty special moment when you got someone like DC coming in. He's donning the Southbridge shirt. He's going that full circle. He's helping Southbridge win another however many titles that they've won. But just having a guy like that, I don't know. Like, I think of Southbridge. The only thing that I know about Southbridge is Southbridge Rugby Club. Like, you go in, the first thing is that you see it's not welcome to Southbridge. It's the Southbridge Rugby Club sign, and it's just like, that's pretty. It really highlights how important or the importance of what a rugby club can be within a community. Yeah. And I think, not to say that, like, obviously myself and Blair, we look after the metro area. Not to say that that metro clubs don't look after their community, but when you're in that, like we say, Waihora, like in Taitat, where else do you go play rugby? Like, you go to Waihora and you play for Waihora. Like, there's no other clubs that go to.
And the Dan Carter thing sums up the father, his old man's still very much involved and very hands-on with the Southbridge Club as well, as much as Dan's living in Auckland and that sort of thing now. You still see the Carter influence there big time. I think his post is still up somewhere from when he was a kid, still floating around. They're still in the same family home. And it's quite a sort of special thing to be able to go around and see that sort of thing in the community and to really celebrate that.
That was big. Like, that was big. Was it last year or the year before when he did that, or a couple of years ago? It was massive, and I think we do miss that. I mean, at the moment, we're lucky in Hiranui to have a couple of Crusaders with Hamish Dalzell and Ben Fennell running around, but we don't seem to have that link to the big boys anymore. And for Dan to do that, to go back to his roots and perform at club level, it was massive, and it means so much for the district.
Yeah, and I think it probably means so much. Like, if you almost explore the boys that he's donning the jersey with, like those Southbridge boys playing with Dan Carter, who they've probably idolised and they've been watching for the 15 odd years, and like, how cool would that be to look across and be like, I've got DC on my team, like, like they've never reached the pinnacles, or their pinnacle is to become kind of like the Shetties of the world, play 350 games for one club type stuff, but also to play with like one of the greatest of all time, first 5/8. Like, how cool is that? And vice versa, imagine being on the other side and you're marking DC and you get an opportunity to put a hit on him, or just to play up against him, or watch how he unpacks a game, would just be absolutely mind-blowing. Like, that's real cool stuff.
Yeah, like, even when we had All Blacks, I mean, this is going back to the ancient days when I was playing, but when the All Blacks came back and played at club level, you raised your own game. It was such a thrill to be playing alongside, now showing my age, but I played alongside the likes of a Mike Brewer or with the All Blacks, but some of the Crusaders like a Danny Charteris or Matt Muster, and those boys coming back and play. Oh man, Pete Bowden, God, you get those guys come back and you lift your game. And so the impact that these guys have on our community is absolutely massive. And I don't think sometimes we actually realise it until they return.
Yeah. And I think, like, you touched on it earlier before around, like, obviously North Canterbury Rugby and Glenmark, like the amount of guys like Robbie Jeans coming out of North Canterbury Rugby, the Todd Blackadders of the world, like those.
Yeah, we've got to go back a wee way, don't we?
Yeah. But there's Bubbles.
Oh yeah, Scotty Hamilton. Yeah.
Even like, I remember hearing Matt Keane talk about him first playing for Glenmark and Bubbles being there and stuff like that. Like, how incredible is that that's still a memory of players, of like how great it was to have guys of that caliber or players of that caliber within their teams, and the fact that they're going back to their home roots to play.
Yeah, we've got Nani Punavai who's registered with Prebbleton here, and I imagine once if he ever gets available to don the royal blue for Prebbleton, it'll be a massive day out there, and that's probably a good experience for both sides of the players, the player themselves coming in, just getting into the local community and seeing sort of how much impact they have, as well as the players around them. It's just one of those cool things that we can sort of go back and talk about for a while. So yeah.
Well, see, Pablo Montero was registered for Saracens, and he actually came out to their club day. Didn't get on the field, obviously, and didn't have, but the impact he had off the field just by being there was huge. And we had little kids. He was kicking the ball backwards and forwards, and these kids have had photos with him, and they're going to remember that day for a long time. And hopefully, that sort of thing will encourage them to, give back to their club. When you see these guys, like we had our first gathering last night of the NC rep side, and Matty Keen's really, really big on giving back. And one of the things that was highlighted last night is, fellas, you're representative players now. So when you go back to your clubs, there are all these things that you can do to raise the bar. And they talked about getting to junior games and showing your face at junior games. Getting, if you're allowed to, get behind the bar and serve the people in the, at volunteer level. Sweep the sheds, clean the club rooms, pick the chairs up, just simple stuff like that about giving back. And I think that's the goal of, I suppose, in our district. We want to create an environment where people are really happy to give back to their rugby clubs and community.
Yeah, and I think you've probably got one of the, like, I've known Matty Keen, probably not as long as you've known Matty Keen for Budgie, but for a wee while, and like that guy just bleeds country footy.
Yeah.
And that's super special, and for him to be a player, now he's coaching and he's trying to give back as the best way he can to obviously he spent a lot of time coaching Glenmark and Cheviot, and now he's giving back to the bigger, wider community of North Canterbury. Like that's a really special moment.
Yeah, and you look across in Ellesmere as well. You look at those McElroy boys, who have been playing for a million years, who are still servants of the game and giving back to the game. And I hate to say this out loud, but even the likes of a Michael Sheet, and hopefully he'll never see this, but I'm sort of peeing in his pocket a wee bit. Sheety's been a big part of Southbridge for a very long time, a big part of the community. Now he's involved here at CRFU level, but his commitment to the game, and giving back to his own, little area it's been massive. And that's what we really want to create. We want to create that environment where players are giving back to their clubs, so that the players who are there at the moment will want to, the younger players will want to continue that tradition of giving back.
Yeah. Yeah, who was it? Even like a Merv Todd. Like,
God bless him. Yeah.
How incredible is that man as a coach? Coaches out at Darfield, comes in, does a season out at Lincoln Uni, Darfield, and then he just goes back home to Darfield to pick up where he left off. Like, quite easily he could have got sucked into the, I guess the metro rugby life, but he just,
we call it the black hole out the country. Once you're in it, it's very hard to get out.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think that's really amazing. You'll definitely know Merv and probably your coaches better in your role, Nath. So, what are some of the cool stuff that you're seeing out and about in your community?
There's quite a few things going on. It was quite good to see Prebbleton get their own open women's team this year, and I think it worked out there. It's been sort of 20 odd years since we've last done that. So that was quite cool. It was a bit of a work in progress the last couple of years to get off the ground. So, and getting awesome support out there. So they're a young team, and they're a lot of new faces to rugby, which is awesome. So they've obviously had some results and coming up against some very experienced players, the likes of Christchurch and that sort of thing as well. But it's awesome to see them kicking on. Ideally, I'll put the challenge out to some other clubs out there to do the same, so we can have a couple of teams and we can sort of talk about making it a bit more of a Southbridge Shield event with North Canterbury as well. It'd be quite cool to just add that demographic to it. Going forward. But some other things going on in rugby. We've got 5 coaches working back with Jimmy Sinclair and a coaching for impact course, which is sort of trying to get grow the game and making it sort of enjoyable for our teenage space, which is obviously for all of our regions a real growth area that we're trying to make sure that kids stay in the game in that sort of period and not, and still enjoy community football rather than, just missing out on the sort of elite stuff and then giving up the game. It's still a big part of what we're trying to do. And I think that's was sort of the conversation we're sort of leading to. That community is quite big for us. It's all awesome with the pros, but we want to see those Michael Sheets of the world. God, we're going to mention him a lot today. 250 or 300 games for their own club and being their own local community hero. So going from there, so that's where that course is going from there. There's some awesome change and some coaches that were pretty old school in their ways of thinking. They're doing this course and been challenged and changed the way they're thinking and getting up with the play around what kids and teenagers want these days out of their rugby. So Darfield Rugby Club are really championing the older rep grades, the under 8, 9, 10, 11 rep grades, and doing some real awesome stuff to try and keep that going as an alternative to rugby or just another stepping stone to remove barriers to rugby. So heaps of stuff going on in that teenage junior space, and it sort of sums it up.
I just want to pick on something there that you, or not pick on, sorry, but just pull on like a little thread that you talked about there around that teenage space. Like I know that we held a workshop with Jimmy. Again, let's highlight the fact that he's also been a magnificent servant of community rugby. Obviously here and behind the green fence at Rugby Park, but also like started his journey out at Southbridge as well, and that type of stuff. Just absolutely ripping up trees, that man does when it comes to coaching. But we had one of your Prebleton that guys that were part of that Coaching for Impact course, and he ended up what were we talking about? Was it around theming and
Brad Granger from the Prebleton under 14 halves. Yeah, so he's really sort of came into a session. I think it was Jimmy was talking around theming and campaigns, sort of setting up and having some sort of way to tie the group together. And he's really taken the ball by the horn with his own team, something he hasn't really done before. Prebleton have got the Penguins that they sort of use the club theme, which is sort of loosely across all teams, but he's done the Warthogs, which is sort of tie into what they're trying to do on the rugby field about how they want to play and what they want to get out of the season. And he's doing some real awesome work in that space. He's a really quality man, work in that junior space, and it's an asset to have him in the Ellesmere community. So
I think it's probably really important that we highlight. So what's the coach's name? Because I think that's quite
Brad Granger.
Who? Sorry?
Brad Granger. So
yeah. So shout out to him for I guess doing some stuff. Like I know in my community, a lot of the teams have names. Like my son plays for the Burnside Razors, so a number of their teams are named after the players that they've got hanging up on the wall and stuff like that. So which is really cool. And he's coached by Stephen Yates, so who's a proud Burnside man, and obviously his son's kind of like you said, Budgie, like his son's plays for Burnside as well. So and he's doing some wicked. Well, both those coaches are doing some wicked things there. So they're called the Razors. Sumner is outstanding with the way that they theme up their teams and their junior spaces. They've all got that nautical theme, like the bull sharks or the seals or whatever it is. Like it's a cool way to keep the kids connected and engaged as well, because they might not go to the same school, or obviously in your communities that probably would be the case, but obviously in town they might not go to the same schools, but they can connect on a different level.
Yep, it's that sense of belonging that we talk about when we're talking that FABS model with Rugby Smart and that sort of thing as well. It's that little thing that's just theirs for their own team, and it's just a good way of connecting it. So it's really awesome to see sort of Brad and some other teams fighting around the year. We're really highlighting a theme, and just as simple as that's their team name, it's part of their cry, but their war cry or whatever they want to do pre-game, but it's just something just for them, and that's going to create that sense of belonging that we've sort of been talking about in that Rugby Smart space.
It's good. It's really good. Yeah, we got our big team, the grown-up team, the Hiranui Hogs out our way, and it started off as a bit of a giggle, the Hiranui Hogs, and they've just, I suppose, in that area where there's a fair bit of pig shooting going on, and it's just stuck, and they've grown it, and they breathe it now. So we've got boys who attend boarding school because they're so far out of town. A lot of their boys are returning home, and a couple this year who played, first 15 rugby for boys high have gone back home again to farms and stuff, and they're proud to be hogs, and it's really good to see. And you're right, Nate, that sense of belonging is just massive. It's a massive part of our country, I suppose, our country ethos when it comes to playing footy.
Yeah, you're right. It's kind of ingrained into our DNA, probably even whether or not it's rugby or any other sport, like sport in general is just ingrained in us.
Yeah.
As Kiwis, I like to think, like, whether you're a football player or you play hockey or netball, or now obviously there's more sports that are coming through, obviously basketball, table tennis, all that type of stuff, those non-traditional sports. But I think if one things that I've noticed out and about around the traps is that sports clubs tend to be a big focal point of the communities that people live in.
Yeah.
Is that what you guys would obviously see that?
Yeah, we've got a lot of clubs now are just, trying to develop sports hubs, which to me makes a lot of sense nowadays. If you get an area like an Ashley or an Oxford, a Colvin and Wahurunui, those areas are quite big. The areas they drag in from are quite big. If you base your netball team there and maybe a squash team, and you've got your bowls lawn there as well, which it just pulls everybody in. Already you've got a lot of people coming to that venue anyway during the morning and the afternoon, because that's where their kids are, that's where their sons are playing, their daughters are playing, and so they head there. So yeah, I'd forgotten what it was like. I did a million years for Christchurch, playing in the front row, and then moving back out into I was honestly to go to the coast first and play on the coast. You realise just how tribal it is and how much the teams have impact the community. And then coming back from there and heading out country, it's very similar. The club rooms becomes it's the hub for the afternoon. It's the hub for the early evening. It pulls together the community, and the stuff you hear on the sidelines is outstanding. It's not just rugby.
No, it's not just rugby. Although they, after a couple of points, they tend to figure out how we can fix the game pretty quickly.
Oh, very quickly, very quickly.
He gets them out of the box thinking anyway.
Yeah.
True. Yeah, tackle for under sixes, very important.
Yeah. Yeah, which is well, I don't know how important that is, but
it is interesting though when you go back and you listen to the old heads talk about how the game's changed and how attitudes have changed and how people have changed. It's the same conversations that my father had with his mates. I guarantee his father had with his mates. Just because our thinking's changed, it's like, oh, the game's changed forever. It's still the same game. It still brings people together, and we still play it for fun. Although you wouldn't think about that some days, but we do play it for fun, and it just actually brings the best out of people, that team sport and mixing with other people.
Yeah, I guess it's that probably enough. There's that weird thing around how just as humans we enjoy community and we enjoy contact with other people to have. I don't know, Nate's been saying it the whole time around that belonging piece. Like it's just, I think we go back and look when we, probably not in that far distant past, but when we were all locked down, like myself personally, like I know that I didn't enjoy it. Like not only did I have to be a dad 24/7, which I love my kids, but sometimes you just need to escape and get to the office, and like the family time was really good. I really enjoyed it, but also you miss those social connections that you had with, with the old boys down in the club rooms, or the chats with the players, or the hot debriefs with the coaches after the game when they're talking about missed opportunities or great opportunities that happened, or this player and the next. Like, it's those. I think those are really special around community rugby. That's cool.
And you look at the way that people flocked to the club rugby after that happened, after lockdown. The numbers on the sidelines at club rugby were massive. Compared to what we've been used to, because people missed it so much. And I suppose that that old we could bust out a song line. You don't know what you've got until it's gone, and that was exactly what it was like. It's interesting that how quickly we've forgotten, how much it meant to us, because people have drifted back to just not showing up or being somewhere else. But that game had such an impact on us that we all wanted to be at club rugby when it started.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're 100% right there. So if we look about, this is probably a good segue, you're talking about those guys on the sideline talking about how much the game's changed. So North Canterbury's looking to head to Japan. That's a pretty dramatic change. You wouldn't see too many North Canterbury country clubs or even country representative clubs head to the Orient.
Yep, it's a big one. It's different, and it's sowing the seeds for another pathway. What we're trying, we met with Robbie last year, actually Rob and Dave Moffat, about pathways for our country players, and this is just not North Canterbury focused, because
and that's Robbie Deans you're talking about. What's that? That's Robbie Deans you're talking about.
Can I say his name out loud? Because if you say, and at some places, like the sun breaks through the clouds, and especially up at Omaha, he's a godlike figure. But what we talked about was pathways for our players, and we talked about Bubble Hamilton, possibly the last ever club player playing in North Canterbury to represent the All Blacks. And I don't know who the last player selected from club rugby in Ellesmere was to play, who was playing club rugby and was chosen out of a club rugby side in Ellesmere to play for the All Blacks. Who would that have been, Nate?
I honestly can't tell you. Obviously, Dan was sort of floating around Metro club scene when he first made the All Blacks, but came back after he sort of got established. It's in terms of someone who's out and out. And Ellesmere, probably the closest one would be, I think Mitch Dunshay, if he could keep himself fit, was probably thereabouts. I think he was in the All Blacks trial, but he's the one that's been Springston pretty much through and through. But it's probably been a while since we've had an Ellesmere out and out from club.
And so on the back of that, that was the conversation starter really, and we've got some pretty good players in the country who have chosen to play their rugby in the country, and I don't want to make this a political football, but I think I've already have started, but I don't want to make it political football. But what we want to do is, at managing North Canterbury Rugby, and you've got Ellesmere Rugby, we want to actually create a reason for playing for our players, and starting back with our junior players. And so the opportunity came up. If we create this link with Japan, with the Wild Knights, I don't think they're Panasonic anymore. I don't want to do that wrong. The idea was to grow this into a competition, to actually have a week away where we may play against the Wild Knights development side, drag Ellesmere along for the ride as well, and create these pathways that will hopefully extend the life of our club rugby, but also, listen to me, I'm on my soapbox, but also get our young players, our 6, 7, 8, 9-year-olds looking along the road and going, there's something there for me if I stick around, I don't have to pack my bags and go into town. I've done it, bugger it. But the thing is, we've got a lot of players who are already in town who are studying. We know that. But we want to create opportunities for our guys. So if there are guys around in town who are playing, senior reserves and are not getting a shot at, the big time, opportunities, Nate and I in the future, we're going to create huge opportunities for our players. So come on down.
Come on. But I think like you said, you didn't want to get on your soapbox, but I think you're right.
Look at you looking over your shoulder.
I was looking out at the green grass actually.
Oh,
on
right.
the field,
Okay.
But I was thinking, well, the only way grass can grow that green if it wasn't for agriculture. But what I'm trying to say is, like, that with those pathways, like there is some heck of a lot of talented players that do come out of country footy, and I've been pretty blessed to have coached and been around some of them. Some of them, well, actually, quite a lot of them have been a lot of your boys from when you were coaching First 15 out at Rangiora High. So the Brixton Towers and the Angus's and our own son Jimmy, and then the other son
I'll be allowed back to North Canterbury.
and Miva, and the list can go on. But there is so much talent out there. And you mentioned about those boys that come in, they board at the hostels, stuff like that. And I think that's really cool that there is an opportunity to go back to their clubs. And I think the more those junior players do go back to their original clubs, I think the better for rugby. Because I think a successful club, although success can be measured by the amount of titles that you've got up on the wall, obviously behind me. But you can also look at like the longevity of a club. Like you look at a business. Yeah. There's a couple of miniatures over there. But you look at like businesses, successful businesses are businesses that have been around, that are long lasting. And I think there's a lot of clubs that have been around for so many years, although they may not have all the titles that they wish that they have, they've still got a club. And I think it's what's probably really sad is that there are clubs out there that have had to either finish up completely, or maybe they've had to change their identity and join with another club, which is another awesome way to keep a community engaged, keep rugby engaged. But I think successful clubs are clubs that are still going to be around for the next generation.
Yeah. I mean, if Nate looks in his backyard, and I know he's been doing some travelling over the peninsula and what have you, but if you look back at some of the original trophies that go out and around, Peninsula had their own competition. I think that Melbourne had their own competition. And up my way, we had Huranui had their own competition, and North Canterbury was different to Huranui. It was Waimak had a competition. We are seeing those clubs slowly either merge or fold completely, and I think by providing an opportunity and the opportunity to go to Japan, to get the likes of an Ellesmere along and an Otago country, and link in with Queensland country like we have in the past, to actually pull all those guys together, it's another pathway to grow our footy. And look, I take my hat off to what these guys are doing. These guys are making a decision. They're moving to town because they believe that's what's good for them. But if we can provide something in our backyard and say, hey guys, look at this. We're trying to grow our rugby, and that's just it. And we're trying to grow our rugby in our community and give our rugby players purpose.
Yeah. That's real cool. I've also noticed, Nate, that you've managed to fully lock in all your representative coaches and all that type of stuff. So that looks pretty exciting for what's happening out at Ellesmere Rugby. You've got some pretty key coaches in some pretty key areas, the likes of Rhys Allen's in the mix. He brings a whole lot of experience. Obviously, his time, not to belittle country rugby at all, but his time in town and being at Sumner and being kind of moulded and enhanced by a little bit of Razor factor, but as well as his own little flair. And then he's obviously gone down the Canterbury Māori rugby route, and now he's in your mix. How's a Rhys Allen doing out there?
Yeah, he's doing, obviously Southbridge have been tracking pretty well the last couple of years. But COVID the wise this year, so they missed out on the combined stuff, but I'm sure they'll be ready and roaring to take the Ellesmere competition by the horn. So, the rep stuff's pretty big for us in terms of just a gathering of the players, and taking on North Canterbury is probably the big one for us. We've snuckily made sure that COVID kept interrupting so we could hold the Southbridge Shield for a couple of years at least. So I think we've done relatively well there. But it's quite a cool thing. It's quite a good thing around the community and that sort of thing as well. Getting all the clubs is a good chance to put the probably club pride and club allegiances to one side and just become Ellesmere. And it's quite cool. We can open it up to a few development opportunities and stuff like that, even with our Cares and our Colts going on in there. So we've got Tim Knowles doing the development and getting some players coming through, and just sort of reiterating what Budgie was saying, just trying to give these guys the opportunity that maybe they don't want to chase hard the dream of being the Crusader and going straight from school there, but want to take their rugby pretty seriously, and if opportunities present themselves in front of them, they'll take them, but they're not actively chasing. They still want to do some other stuff with their own lives and just creating that balance. So yeah.
And you guys used to have a cool wee thing with, was it Queensland Country?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We talked about
stuff. So beyond my time, I think it was a bit before my time.
No, you're right. They did. They were involved. Nate, Ellesmere and North Canterbury would take on a touring Queensland Country. North Canterbury toured. We stayed in Brisbane and played a few teams while we were over there. So we kept that link going with the Blue Healers, as they're known. And they're a good bunch of lads, and they're very similar to guys, except they have to travel further, a lot further. But very similar mentality. A lot of the boys are off farms. They just want to play rugby, and their pathway to professional rugby is pretty much like ours. You've got to go through hoops or be incredibly exceptional or move. And so we still have that link. We want to continue to develop that link. In fact, Sam Cordingley, Queensland halfback in the day, he's having quite a bit to do with Queensland rugby nowadays, and he's trying to establish the link again and get them touring again. But as Nate pointed out, with Ellesmere introducing COVID to stop the Southbridge Shield going backwards and forwards, it's infected the whole world. So we're actually, travel's been a bit boring.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that little pandemic thing keeps creeping in. Hey, if I say Ellesmere Rugby to you, Nath, what does that mean to you?
It's probably sort of reiterating the same thing we've said. It's the thing. It's a sense of community. It's not that. I don't want to see the negative side of what I'm about to say, but the third half is very important, and that's just not the alcohol side of things, but it's the sense of community and getting together and stuff like that. You go down to any home game for Div 1 or club day or anything like that, it's a massive occasion, and that's probably what sort of sums up, and I'm sure Budgie was saying the same thing out there, was sums up what Ellesmere Rugby is all about. It's just about getting on the field with your mates, bashing each other, and then going for a feed and a drink afterwards. So it's more around that connection and going from there. So it's not then they're sort of realistic that that's a lot of them, that's where their level is, and that's what they enjoy, and they want to make sure they're just playing with their mates, and that's the thing going forward. So that's the biggest thing from what I picked up from my time at Ellesmere.
Yeah, and so in that third half, who's got the better feed?
Oh,
out there.
Oh, the Thursday nights at Preelden after training. My time there last year. That's pretty next level. It's Mullan was the RDO there. It was a very good recruitment tool for some players that are sort of talking and ahhing where they're going to end up, and say, well, we'll definitely feed you Thursday night, which will mean you're full for the next probably 3 days afterwards. As Jolene Nola does a great job out there. They're all pretty good, to be honest. I spent a lot of time in Metro and coming in where it was just a bit of a spread and a few savouries, and that's about it. And then you're on your way. Whereas it's a proper sit-down meal. I think there's been some roast done, and obviously they've got a lot of farmers and going on there. So, but yeah. I think I might get in too much trouble if I say too much about one club's got the best feed at anyone. I think they're quite proud of it. So,
oh mate, get off the fence. No, that's all good. What about you, Budgie? When I say North Canterbury Rugby, What is it? What?
Straight away, you think farming for me, and I think the opportunity to let off a bit of steam after a hard day on the farm. I was having a chat with some of the lads my vintage last weekend, and they were saying that the club rooms, the club rooms is such a great place to sit down and talk about some of the tough stuff you're dealing with during the week. And, nothing to do with rugby, but the fact that you can sit down and talk about maybe there's a drought or there's too much rain. Weather seems to be a big focus. And I think the club has become that place to go to, the place where you're guaranteed your mates are going to be. You're guaranteed there's going to be someone there who's going to listen. And so, the rugby is really, really important. Otherwise, I wouldn't have a job. But I loved it. The third half. Can I use that? That's brilliant. That is so important for especially our senior men, our males who don't share a lot of stuff. So I'm going quite deep here, but it is a good opportunity to sit down and if you get a good coach, they're the coaches who will listen to all your stuff, not just the fact you missed a tackle or the fact that you're scrummaging too high or whatever. They'll listen to the stuff that's going on outside of footy as well, and they're bloody good people.
Yeah. You touched on a really good point there, Budgie, around obviously the third half being great around having a feed, but like that actual being able to connect and like share those common experiences outside of rugby. So yep. Obviously, I don't know, discussing stock to pasture ratios. Look at my farming terminology is very weak. I was a city kid that grew up in the country, and I still didn't understand what half of the chat was happening. I was just happy to be out on the four wheeler running around with my mates. But being able to have those conversations and troubleshoot around a meal, it's like rugby's rugby, but it's the vehicle to get to the deep root of what's happening to everybody's life. And I was having a chat to a coach that I used to work with, Martin Dodgson Field. He's the CEO at Mainland Football now, and he's one of those guys, and he coaches people. He doesn't, and they just so happen to play rugby.
Yeah,
he just gets it. And we were having a chat last night about how important it is to see the person for who they are.
Yeah, exactly right.
And just ask those questions like, how you been, not as a, oh yeah, I've been good, sweet, and then move on. Like, no, how are you actually doing? What's been going on? And I know, I think back to, or most recently, a good man passed, old Mr. Mike O'Donovan.
Yeah.
Like, he was an absolute genius around that type of stuff, like just connection just like that straight away. So no, I think that's real important that you mentioned that stuff, Budgie. So yeah.
Yeah, no, it's probably the best way. I mean, you talk about Mike. Mike was my first ever coach that actually really listened to what was going on in your world. And as a fiery 22-year-old, he was so good at dragging me aside, and he was quite prepared to call it as it was. And of course, he was the local publican, so he could bar you as well for a period of time. Mike ran he had a special corner in the bar, and I don't know if you know the Australasian, but the corner of the bar that's closest to the hills, he would sit down that end. It was like a confessional, and he'd rotate players through that. So he was probably one of the best coaches I'd ever had around making sure that players were able to express themselves, not only on the paddock but off the paddock. But he made the environment secure so you could, and that's truly a guy who meant so much to footy in Canterbury and on the coast and everywhere he went.
Yeah, Yeah, no, he was definitely a very special man, and he'll always be a very special man. So, we'll keep trucking along. I guess we're probably at that stage, gents, where we're going to jump into our quick fire segment. So we've just got a couple of cool wee questions that we've just developed here in the office. Nothing too technical, but heaps of fun. So it seems you guys are all about the third half, Ellesmere and North Canterbury. You guys are joining forces today. So you're going to have a wee dinner party. So you've got 3 people that you can invite to dinner each, but you're also cooking it. So I need a dish from each of yous, and I need 3 people that you're bringing along.
Oh.
You talk, Nate. Give me time.
The meal, I do a good steak. I rate my barbecue skills. I'm quite particular about how my steak is cooked. So it'll be sort of a steak and salad or steak and chips, something relatively simple. Smash it out on a barbecue and a couple of cold ones. That's my meal. In terms of who I'd bring, ooh. Wayne Smith is probably one, just to pick his brain around, it obviously will be rugby orientated or sport orientated, and that's sort of the deep connection about what he does in his space. I really enjoy, and just something slightly left field, Russell Howard, and sometimes he's obviously the English comedian, but some of the interviews he does, I enjoy. He's obviously quite a funny person, but he does some quite cool interviews with quite interesting people and really sort of delves deep and that sort of thing as well. Okay, so that's 2. I need one more. I don't know. Trying to think. A guy called Kuan Ray. May not know him. That sort of thing. He's what he does is he helps businesses, but he's around the human being business, about how to connect with people and that sort of thing as well. It'd be quite cool to talk to him and bring him along and see what he brings to the conversation. There's my 3. Kind of the spot, but yeah, interested to see. You've got time to think now, mate. So
yeah, I have had time to think. It's funny because this question came up last night, but it was about rugby players. If you could bring rugby players back from the dead, who would you talk to? Interesting conversations in our house, I tell you. After my wee stint playing footy in England, I've developed a penchant for curry. So I'd make probably a little lamb korma. I've got, so I grow my own lambs too, which is quite helpful. So lamb korma. Now, who would I invite? Sir Ken Robinson. I don't know if you know Sir Ken, but he was big in the education field about stifling creativity, about schools crushing creativity. And I'd really love to sit down and pick his brains. He left us a couple of years ago now, but he would have been fantastic. His TED Talks are amazing.
What's the one question that you'd asked him?
How does your brain operate? My one question would, how do we encourage creativity? How do we break the mold so schools can actually assist in getting children to create? Don't get me started on the school system. I'll better move on quickly. Nelson Mandela would be my second one. I'd love to sit there. I mean, we talk about teaching resilience. Good God. That man and resilience, he's beyond resilience. And who would be... I talked about Jack Manchester. I'm ex-Christchurch, so Jack Manchester was an All Black captain, and apparently his way of thinking back in the day was really left field for rugby. And I'd love just to unpack why he changed the thinking around rugby, why his thinking was so different. And he had a good set of ears too.
He had a good set of ears. What, full of cauliflower?
Oh, no, they were just like, you could probably pick up a couple of different channels with them. They were brilliant.
No, that's awesome. That question around how do we encourage creativity, that's I think as coaches, because obviously this potty's going to go out to a lot of our community players, parents as well as coaches. Yeah, how do we encourage creativity? Like sometimes we can get lost in the process, but within that process, there still has to be a level of curiosity that the players have to have. Like what can we do here to try and fix this situation and stuff like that. That's an outrageous question there, Budgie. You're not just good looks.
Oh, sorry. Shit, that was loud.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'll be honest. The work that Nate brought up a really good point the other night when we were running that foundation thing. It was brilliant around the superhero thing. What do you say again? I don't want to quote you wrong.
Sum up your current coaching style as a superhero.
Yeah, yeah. And you look at the coaches out there who are the Incredible Hulk, who, Hulk smash everything. But if we want to have kids be creative when they're on the paddock and we can't figure, why are they being so boring and why they do, we don't create the environment where they can. And I was the Hulk. When I first started coaching, I was the, we need to be able to create that environment where kids are prepared to make mistakes and give things a go without having their bloody heads kicked off,
Yeah.
And you still see that.
Yeah.
And that's a real cringe factor for we coach educators.
And I think that's a really important, mate, you've been profound all the way through this chat here, Budgie.
Sorry, mate.
That's real important. Like as coaches, we kind of have to stand back and let creativity happen, or let our athletes make mistakes. Because if we don't let them make mistakes, they're not learning, and if they're not learning, then we probably are in a sense stifling that creativity for them to start thinking a little bit more laterally or a little bit more outside the box, that type of stuff. So I think let them try stuff, and there's no perfect way to try it then at rugby training, because what have you got to lose? You've got everything to gain as a coach from it. You've got nothing to lose from it. Yeah. So that's another really good point. Next question: what is one of your favourite rugby memories, either coaching or playing?
Do I go first? Do I go first?
Yeah, you go first.
Thank. Yeah. My favourite memory, hands down, would be as a coach taking Rangiora to the top four at Palmy North, and then being there and being introduced in the big meal that they have for all the teams, and having one of our local officials say, it's so good having the little teams here. And that just inspired the boys to go on and play in the final and nearly tip over St Peter's Cambridge in the final. Lost by, I think it might have been 5 points in the finish. But that was huge.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Sort of flipped on through a couple of different ones, but probably the one that stands out, and probably the more I think about it, it's probably one that's going to be last through my coaching career. It's probably a pretty special time as a coach. I was still pretty green, and I was doing still in my sort of early stages where I sort of got roped in to coach at Pep High School. We had a real crack at trying to get Pep High School team into what's now the UC Championship. UC Cup, I can't remember which way round it is.
Miles Toyota.
Miles Toyota, mate.
Miles sorry.
Toyota,
Yes, sorry. Oh, gosh. Gotta make sure I get that right. We got pretty close, so we had a team for 2 years that made semi-finals and a final of the under-18 comp, and it was not necessarily about the results, but they were just a great bunch of boys to coaches. Then me and the other coach got along pretty well as well. And it's just a real good atmosphere in terms of the reason we were successful. It wasn't necessarily that we would be the best rugby players going around. It's just because that sense of belonging and the enjoyment. It was just a really enjoyable time. It's probably something that's probably always going to sit with me as a pretty cool time, and trying to emulate that again was sort of the goal of mine to go forward. So yeah,
that's good.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, both those stories are mint. I like your little David versus Goliath story there, Budgie, and then obviously yourself, Nath. It's probably a little bit of the same. as well. Just a little school just being the best that they can be, going out there, almost like a little Mighty Ducks thing.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I know, how good. Next question. What is one piece of advice you'd give a young Nath and a young Budgie starting out on their coaching careers? And Nath, you're not giving Budgie advice. Budgie, you're giving yourself the advice.
Oh, okay, right.
Okay. Enjoy the process is probably the big one. It doesn't really have to happen at once. You know, you're going to get it wrong. You're going to get it wrong a lot of times. But as long as you're sort of learning and growing from it, go from there. There's probably a time coaching-wise that I was trying to get through a bit quick and trying to push myself a bit far, but just enjoying where your feet are and what you're currently doing at the moment, not thinking too far ahead.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool, Pit.
Bit of advice I'd give myself starting off coaching would be just listen to your players. It's something I've learned over the years that it's taken a while to become intrinsic, but listen to your players and ask them how they're feeling about stuff. That's been a biggie. Yeah.
Do you find like I can remember or even still now when I coach, there's times that I feel like I need to stand up and have to have all the answers and have to verbally spew everything out at them to kind of show them that I know my stuff, or but the listening to your players, like it's quite a hard thing to do for a coach, especially a young coach coming through, because you're trying to prove yourself to the world and to your players to build that trust and confidence.
Yeah, true.
What was it in that Budgie, and probably in Nate as well, what was it, well, can you pick a moment where you're like, oh, I get it now?
Yeah.
What was the little eureka moment?
The aha moment.
Yeah.
Couple. The first one was back when Kim Brown was sort of in the coach education space, and he came out. So I can't even remember what it was coming out for. It wasn't anything to do, and I was doing that classic four corners truck and trailer drill. Everyone knows it, and cringe, and I cringe now that I was doing it.
Yeah.
But the question, all he did was this: why do you do that?
Yeah.
And I couldn't give him a decent answer other than I was a very green coach, probably my second season. I've always done that, always had done it as a player, but never actually got the why behind why we did it. So I've never done it since, never done that drill, but it's something that's with that. I'm not quite sure if I'm answering your question. Which changed my coaching philosophy in terms of let's make sure there's a purpose to everything.
Yeah.
And the second one, probably leading into that, was a classic Jimmy Sinclair, and something that I always park on the coaches: turn everything into a game.
Yeah.
You had to play. They're here to, particularly in the community space, they're here to, they play the sport to play the sport or to have fun. So try and turning everything into game, get those learnings that way, and you sort of get that buy-in of the players. So yeah, there's probably the two major ones that I've had.
I think my one was I had a fear of not being in control. I think that comes from school teaching days. I mean, you don't want to have a class of 36 kids swinging from the rafters. And when I first started teaching as a young male, most of my classrooms I was put into were to be basically the bodyguard or the bouncer or whatever it was, because when there are not too many of us. So the way I delivered my coaching back in those days, and I started with Metro primary schools, was very, very, you will do it this way. And it wasn't until an old coach, actually a legend of the Canterbury game, Ian Penrose, cornered me one time and he said, do you realise some of your players actually have an opinion? And it stopped me in my tracks, and I went, right, okay, yeah, he's got a good point. And it sort of turned things around for me. And I'll be forever grateful to Ian for stopping me and saying that to me. But just you're right though, Nate. And Rick, you've got to have the knowledge, but you don't have to have all the knowledge. And just getting input from the players at times is just beneficial. And I think that we've talked about there's more knowledge sometimes in some of those coaching rooms than we actually have ourselves. So just buy into it.
Yeah. Oh, no, that's awesome. All right. Budgie, you might need to go first on this one while Nate thinks up of an answer to it. But what's your go-to drill?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I like chaos. Have basically 5-on-4, 4 on the try line, 5 outside the try line. Try and score as many times as you can from post to sideline. Use no skip passes. Let's see if the ball can do the work, and that's my go-to. Actually, I'll be using it this afternoon, so thank you for reminding me. And no, it's a good one. Good one about space and basically communication.
Yeah. Nate, and you're not allowed to discuss the other one. We'll try not to.
Oh, so I know exactly what he's doing. It's the one I use as well. I love trying to put players out there. It's been sort of chaos. So I've got this. I haven't even got since we've last done that. So that was quite.
Mac had a competition. It was
more space. Everyone's moving. They've got a ball each or more balls than people, and they've got to continually pass the ball around. And it's just trying to teach that sort of unconventional passing because, as much as I'm a hot stickler for technique and stuff like that, offloads rip the game apart as an attack coach. So trying to figure out that they can do all sorts of different ways and be reactive and that sort of thing as well. And also it's a good one to get a bit of laughter and going because they always drop the ball and things and the balls go flying everywhere and just, once again, chaos and lots of learning going on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, no, that's cool. I was just making sure that you didn't mention the four corners. So
brilliant.
Yeah, we're hot on attack. There's a little bit of agenda behind this potty, so we're trying to give as many coaches alternative drills so that they don't talk about start using four corners. So
fair enough.
Our final questions, gents, before I let you guys go back to your busy days. But what does being a coach mean to you?
Oh,
what a question.
It's a goodie, eh? Think before I open my mouth.
Yeah, so I'm going to ponder this for a second.
Geez, there is a first for everything there, Budgie.
Yeah, I know. I knew you'd jump in with that. That's okay.
It's cool filling the space, mate.
Okay, so for me, being a coach is the ability to influence people positively. At the moment, I'm in a situation where I'm trying to support a family through rugby, and it's not just developing the individual; it impacts the whole family. So, like Donnie, like Mike, trying to leave behind a legacy that people will remember me all the positive stuff by. But that's what I think it is: being a positive influence. And just meaning something to somebody. Shit, that was deep.
Yeah, that's awesome though. That's cool. Nate?
You slightly stole what I was going to say.
What happens when you go first?
We like the shield, mate. Coming for it.
It's that creating positive change in someone, whether it is their, pushing those kids on to higher rugby honours, or it's just potentially creating an environment where they feel safe that probably stops them letting down some other bad tracks or dark tracks that rugby sport can support on. So that's probably my biggest why for getting into coaching and getting on this journey, is just to make that sort of positive change and be that positive aspect of people's lives, I guess.
Yeah, cool.
Beautiful. All right, men, I think that's enough for today. I'm sure we'll do a recap. We might need to do a catch up once Ellesmere v North Canterbury is played out, and we'll see who's got the shield in the office, or in their background. But hey, gents, just want to say, like, it's a privilege to obviously be able to speak with you guys today. I know we've had a number of conversations over a few third halves. I've thrown a couple of years under a bus a couple of times at some workshops and stuff like that. But you guys are you're beautiful men. You're fantastic. Doing some really fantastic work out in your communities, and it's awesome that we're able to kind of put a spotlight on those amazing things that you guys are seeing out in your communities, because I think you don't have the likes of the Colin Meadses in the world, or the Grizzers and the Rich Lows and stuff like that, without country rugby, or the Robbie Deans of the worlds as well, without country rugby. So keep up the magnificent work, and I'm sure I'll be seeing you guys around the track pretty shortly.
Yeah, you're just around the corner down the hall. I'll see you on the way out. See you, brother. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, no worries. Cheers, guys. Thank you.